Hello everyone, it's ArtisanTony, and this is another video in our series for our apprentices at the Artisan School of Construction and Philosophy. The concept surrounding the apprentice path is it is a 12-month program, and each month will be divided obviously into 4 weeks, and each of those weeks we will talk about each of these categories: history and tradition, basic skills training, technology, and then finally a career plan, and then we'll have quizzes and that kind of thing. So I have actually completed week 1, week 2, week 3 of the first month, and I'm in the process of finishing up month 1, so soon we hope to have some apprentices starting the program. One of the most important things, I can do as I'm 57 years old, and my goal is to mentor younger people now coming up into the construction industry. This type of training can apply to any field. If you're a plumber or electrician or a lawyer or a doctor, of course they have their own career paths, but the concepts surrounding this are really important. The thing that a lot of people, young people, don't get in the construction industry that they would get in other industries is the mentoring or the structure. Because the structure of, especially in the residential area of the construction industry, the idea of mentoring and guiding our apprentices, our young people through this has basically gone away. So that's what I would like to see come back, and that's part of what this is about. So this is just a typical career path for a carpenter type person, a person that would want to get into carpentry and then make the construction industry a career. So I thought it would be kind of cool to use SketchUp here, which is going to be a career path. Design will be eventually, and each month we will have a different category in the career planning path. So this is just the first one. We will have typical path for design, drafting professional. So this just happens to be the first one for month 1, and it's the typical path that you see in construction. I think the most popular and the most typical. So let's get into it here. So I thought it would be kind of cool to create the proverbial steps of life, or the steps that we take, and because and just show, it's kind of funny because having the different uses of SketchUp is just really cool. And of course I show the uses of SketchUp in our other classes for the apprentices when we're talking about basic framing and that sort of thing, and basic building components. But let's just take a look at the first step. So obviously we're going to start out with education, and it's important for people getting into the construction industry because it is slightly age dependent. You don't want to be 80 years old and get into the construction industry. You want to get into it when you're young, and this is what I did when I was very young. I always knew I wanted to build things, and so when I went to high school, we had this opportunity to become, to go to a vocational high school half a day, and I would attend regular high school the other half of the day, and I did that for 2 years. So I would highly recommend the vocational path, that you talk to your parents if you want to take this path. Talk to your parents and see what kind of opportunities there are for vocational training in high school. If there are not any local opportunities in high school, I would suggest taking on summer jobs with a contractor, and just explain to him that you want to become eventually you want to be a contractor yourself, and you want to put in the work and learn. And so he may have you start off doing odd things. I raked rocks out of the yards to get ready to plant grass before I could even do anything. So It's just one of those things where you have to put in the time, put in the work, and that'll pay off eventually. And then obviously there's a college route for people who want to be in the construction industry that may want to be in more of a technical field like design or drafting or engineering. So let's look at step number 2. After our education, we would want to get our apprenticeship time in. And typically this is done working for a general contractor or working with a subcontractor who specializes in an area. Maybe a framing subcontractor. Maybe you want to be a framing subcontractor yourself, and so you want to work for that person who can give you the training in that area. And you'll also want to sort of develop a specialty. Things in construction are very compartmentalized, even in a residential construction. When I start to build a house, I'm looking for a framing subcontractor, a block layer, a brick mason, a painter, whatever it is, drywall hanger. Those are all subcontractors. And if you have a desire to become one of those, you might want to serve your apprenticeship. Now, these people aren't going to know that you're serving an apprenticeship. This is part of the problem in residential construction. In your mind, you're just going to be saying, I'm going to work for at least 2 years in this area that I want to work, and I'm going to learn as much as I can. And during that time, you're going to be reading and researching and asking questions, and that's what I'm going to be here for in this program. And I hope to be able to follow all of our apprentices through at least 2 to 4 years. So now let's say you've spent a couple of years as an apprentice and you would move up to this next level. Different people accelerate at different rates. It took me a couple of years to get through my apprenticeship program to where I was basically a crew leader. I was a saw man on the job, and sort of in construction, the saw man is kind of the leader of the crew. He's cutting and laying out for people. Well, typically you would have a layout guy and a saw man, but you're going to be, more specialized now in an area that you've decided you wanted to go into. And if that's framing, now you're working in sort of a leadership role with either a contractor or another subcontractor. At this point in my career, I was actually partnering with another subcontractor. We were framing some condos and different things, and we were just splitting the profit on these, and we had our crews working together. And that's the kind of thing I did purposely to kind of learn the business of subcontracting and what's involved. And as we go along, this is just sort of an outline, okay? As we go along, we're going to pick out these individual areas, and I'm going to help you. Once you stop working or work your way up to working for yourself, we'll be looking at things of how to become licensed, how to get insurance and all that. And that's where this is where this training is going to pay off in the long run. So now we've put in all these years. What are we looking at? 2, 4, 6, whatever, 4 to 6 years. And now we want to become our own subcontractor. We are the man. You've worked yourself up to a point to where you've got relationships with builders, and they're asking you to do framing on the homes they're developing, and you're working for yourself now. You may have a couple of guys working with you, and you either specialize in framing, or maybe you specialize in exterior siding and trim, or as I did for several years, specialized in interior trim and millwork. I did a lot of interior trim and millwork for a lot of builders for several years, until I worked my way up to a point to where I felt like I could become a general contractor. Now, in between these years, for me, between becoming a subcontractor and a general contractor, I actually had some architectural training, some design training in drafting and CAD, and that's the kind of thing we will talk about there are little offshoots, okay, and different paths that you can take, and the ones that you're interested in. And what we will be doing is working with each apprentice separately to help them develop that path depending on what their interests are. So now you've worked for several years, you've got the hang of it, and you're ready to take on a bigger responsibility. Maybe you've got some money put back now, you've got a little money in the bank, you've saved, you've worked hard, you've learned, and you're ready to become a general contractor. And this would be a different license. Usually in your state, typically the general contractor's license is, different from this a subcontractor. And I basically went from my journeyman into this stage as far as licensing. I didn't have a license before. Well, of course, when I was coming up into this era here of my subcontracting, there was no license law in Tennessee. When there did become a license law in Tennessee, then I was sort of at this point, at the beginning point. It's sort of a coincidence. At this point, they did come up with a general contractor's license law in Tennessee. So this is when I became a general contractor. And of course now, since I have put in these years of training and learning and apprenticeship, I build custom homes for people. I don't build for other developers because they're tightwads and they don't pay as well. But basically what we do now is I build probably one to two custom homes a year, and then every couple of years I will build one for myself. And this is really where your hard work starts to pay off. You're investing in your own future by developing your own homes that you can sell every 2 years and avoid, at this moment, as of filming this, if you've lived in a house for 2 years, 2 out of the past 5 years, then you can avoid capital gains taxes. And there's all those kind of advantages and things we will talk about as we get to each of these areas, because we've got 12 months. We've got a 12-month program, and each month we will talk about a different aspect of these different steps. We'll also talk about different offshoots again, of these. What type of homes? Do you build solely for yourself? Do you take the dive and go and start building for developers? If you do that, you're gonna probably not make as much money on each home, but you would be expected to build more homes. And it's the same here. If you're going to work for a developer as a subcontractor, you would be expected to stay, your schedule is tighter, the money's tighter. If you're a subcontractor building for an individual or a custom home, it's a little different. It's not as tight there. Now this next step is something I have decided I don't really want to get into. I love this area. I love building custom homes for myself and for other people. I'm not really interested in, at this point in my life, when you get to a certain age, this is something, if you want to be a developer where you're developing whole neighborhoods, where you're working with your local city to develop streets and subdivisions, and you're not so concerned necessarily about the shoe mold or a doorknob in a house, but you want to see whole neighborhoods developed. That's it's an honorable thing, but that's just not something that gets away from. At this point, you're not going into each of the homes you're building, not really, and looking at the quality, or you're not involved with the daily planning of what happens with that home. It's just a whole different. You've entered a whole different era if you decide to go into developing, which is nothing wrong with it. If you've got the financial wherewithal and you've got backing, and there's investors there, then that's really there's a huge step between here and here. And at this point in my life, I have decided I like this area. I'm comfortable here. But what I do want to do, since I'm comfortable here, is help people start here and make their way up. I want to share what I have accomplished with other people. I want to show them how they can get here. I would actually be happy even if 3 or 4 young people came to me and said, I want to be a part of the construction industry. I think it's really cool. I love it. I love building and creating things. Can you help me through these steps? Keep in mind, this is just one path. There are many paths that you can take in your career. The point of this exercise is just to get you to think about what you might want to do and take the steps and plan the steps on how to get there. I look forward to this segment each month. It's a 12-month program, and at the end of each month, this will be our activity, career planning, and we'll take different paths and go through them, and hopefully by the end of that 12 months, you will have a decent idea of where you want to go. Thank you for watching.